When I was 7 years old, my father got into a serious car accident. He was badly injured and he was in a coma for 2 weeks. During that time, I kept catching brief glimpses of him wandering around the house looking confused. Every time I saw him, I would tell my mom, but she just dismissed it as my overactive imagination. When my father finally recovered and came out of the coma, my mom told him about the sightings. My father listened quietly, then asked me to leave the room so he and my mother could talk. I had no idea what they were talking about. Years later, when I was 18, my father sat me down and finally revealed the secret he had been keeping from me. He said that at the time he didn't want to scare me, but while he had been in the coma, he remembered wandering around our house looking for everyone and trying to figure out why the house was empty. He said he would randomly catch brief glimpses of me standing there staring at him. I still get goosebumps thinking about it. One night, when I was just a child, I had a bad dream. Whenever I had a bad dream, my dad would comfort me by letting me play with Legos. I went looking for my dad and found him in the living room. There was a strange man sitting in a chair I had never seen before, and he was talking to my dad. When I came in and walked up to them, my dad shooed me away. He got out the Legos and left me playing with it on the floor while he talked to the strange man. They talked for some time about things I didn't understand, and neither of them said a word to me. Eventually I fell asleep, and when I woke up in the morning, I was back in my own bed. Years later, when I was grown up, I had a strange dream. In the dream, I was sitting in a chair talking to my dad about the future. I saw a young boy enter the room and come towards us. My dad got up and took out a box of Legos and gave it to the boy to play with. My dad sat down again and began telling me about the dangers of time travel and how everything could change if I ever met myself. He said it would mess up the space-time continuum. He insisted that we wait until the young boy fell asleep. Then we continued talking about the future. When I was around 10 to 13 years old, my parents and I were visiting an old fishing island off the coast of my state called Ocracoke Island. It now more or less stays alive off tourists alone. We were staying at Blackbeard's Lodge. We had just settled into our room and my dad had gone out to get some sodas from a vending machine. This was when it gets a little unbelievable. I was laying on one of the beds with my mom watching TV. I don't remember what we were watching, but suddenly the television switched channels to what seemed to be a Science Channel show about black holes aimed at children, as it featured Homer Simpson as sort of a narrator companion. I remember vividly seeing Homer getting sucked into the black hole. It didn't bother me that the TV had changed on its own. I didn't even think about it. We were both rock still. And it wasn't that I couldn't move, it was just the idea of moving didn't cross my mind. I felt like I was in a trance. My mom later told me she experienced something along the same lines. The TV then turned off, and directly next to the bed, what I can only describe as a black hole appeared on the wall. It was about 1.5 feet in diameter, and it was just a black circle on the wall, but it looked like it had depth. There were very dark colors like dark blue and purple swirling around the circle as well. We both just sat and froze staring at the hole until my father walked in and saw the hole and then it disappeared. Needless to say, we left the hotel right then and lodged in another one on the other side of the island. When we talked about it later, my mom recounted the story the same way I did, and my dad says he saw the hole on the wall as well. This takes place a few months ago, and it's not something I've talked about with anyone before, simply because I know no one will believe me. I was staying in a hotel room in the heart of the city for my sister's birthday. After a full night of drinking and dancing, we all wandered back to the room to recuperate before the inevitable trip back home in the morning. My sister, being the most inebriated of us all, decided that it would be fun to run down to the pool and go swimming. So before anyone could convince her otherwise, she shot out the door and bolted down the hallway. Being the mother bear I am, I grabbed the room key and went after her. I don't know what my plan was. Maybe I just wanted to make sure she didn't fall in and drown. I made my way to the elevator, admittedly impressed that I hadn't ran into her yet. I wasn't that far behind her out the door, and with her drunk staggering, I had assumed that I would catch up with her easily. What I didn't know was that my sister had in fact hidden around the corner, past the elevators, waiting for me to leave before she ran back to the room. In her mind, this was an excellent prank. I searched the pool area, and even went up to the lobby, but there was obviously no sign of her. I decided to go back to the room and wait for her to eventually stumble in, laughing about the whole adventure. Now, here's where things get strange. I got out of the elevator on our floor, turned left to head to our room, and then I just stopped. I felt my heart beat a little faster, and I felt like my brain had just stopped working. It felt like that momentary disarray when you forget how to do something you've been doing subconsciously for years, simply because you're focusing on it too much. But this was different. This was worse. Our room was missing. But not just our room. The room next door was gone too. I stared at the numbers on the doors, bewildered. 709, 710, 713. Room 711 and 712 were conspicuously absent. I stared at the numbers for what seemed like hours, trying to understand how I'd gotten it so wrong. I paced up and down the hallway, touching the doors to reassure myself that I wasn't dreaming. I convinced myself that I had gotten the door number wrong, that somehow I had forgotten which room was mine. I walked back to the elevator, determined to go down to the lobby, swallow my pride, and ask the desk clerk which room I was staying in. I had pressed the button and was waiting for the elevator to open, but something made me walk back down the hallway. And there were the rooms, 711 and 712, right where they should have been all along. I felt shaken to my core and suddenly so exhausted I could barely keep my eyes open. I tiredly opened our door and was faced with my sister and her friend laughing at me and poking fun at me for falling for her trick. I half-heartedly joined in, but went to bed pretty quickly after that. A couple of days after, I hesitantly brought up the subject of that night with my sister, asking if she had noticed anything weird or somehow off. She essentially dismissed me, and that was the last time I made reference to that night. I've tried to put it out of my mind, but it still makes me uneasy. I live in a small town in the south where we have to pay property taxes on any vehicles or other large properties that we own, along with the yearly federal taxes. I've lived in this county for 4 years, and I've always paid the property tax on my vehicle on time. A few weeks ago, it was brought to my attention that I needed to have a city registration sticker on the truck to say that I've actually paid my taxes on it, and it's kind of super illegal if you don't. Anyway, I went down to the city administration building to pick up my sticker. It should have been a simple in and out type deal because my taxes were paid up. My dad went in with me because I'm not always the greatest at talking to people, and sometimes I freeze up talking to authority figures. But the woman at the desk was nice enough. She asked me for my license and registration and all that, and everything seemed to be going well until she tried to actually pull up my records. Which is when she discovered that she couldn't find any proof that I'd even set foot in this town before today. There were no records that I'd paid any of my taxes. There were no records of me at all. When she cross-checked with the DMV, she couldn't figure out where my license and registration had even come from, because by all the city's records they shouldn't have existed. There were absolutely no paper trails that implied that I lived in this city for any length of time. My dad was getting pretty miffed by this point, because documentation like that shouldn't just disappear. The woman behind the desk checked a few more times, and then told us to go to the county building down the street to see if there was some sort of problem on their end. So we went, and talked to the lady behind the desk there. She was slightly more helpful in that she did find records that I'd moved to the town 4 years ago and paid for everything I was supposed to. And then apparently I dropped off the radar after 2 years and hadn't been seen since. I'd stopped making payments that I owed. I'd stopped paying taxes. I'd just fallen entirely off the face of the planet, and any time they tried to send bills to me, they'd been bounced back by my landlord with a "this person no longer lives at this address" notice. She also kept looking at me strangely and asking if I was absolutely sure that the person I was claiming to be was actually me, because I seriously did just vanish, apparently. So as far as the city was concerned, I'd never existed in the county despite there being physical evidence that I do. As far as the county was concerned, I lived here for 2 years before literally disappearing and never being heard from again. And the one woman who saw me after the 2-year interval was treating me really strangely, like the disappearance was a big deal or had been noticed by a fair amount of people. I'm not popular or well known in my town either. I have maybe 2 friends and my parents, and that's it. My dad by this point was mad as hell because we couldn't figure out why my records were so inconsistent with the physical receipts to the contrary, and his interpreting that the woman at the county as having an attitude problem on top of it. We decided to just head back over to the city building and give it one more shot before going down to yell at the DMV, or whatever would make my dad feel better, I guess. We walked into the city administration building and were greeted by the same woman who had helped us when I tried to get my sticker the first time. She was acting like she'd never seen us before, which was a little strange and admittedly kind of aggravating because you'd think she'd remember. We'd just been there less than 2 hours before. She asked me for my license and registration. I handed them over again. She found me in the system within a couple of minutes. I had my sticker in less than 5. I asked her if the system glitches like that often, and she told me that she didn't know what I was talking about, and asked if I had been helped by someone else earlier in the day. My dad told her that we'd literally just been there less than 2 hours ago, and at that time she couldn't find any proof that I existed at all. My dad's pretty loud when he's irritated, and this attracted the attention of the security desk near the door of the building. Both people at the security desk said they hadn't seen us all day. The woman helping us said the same thing, that she hadn't seen either of us come in all day. The security guards offered to check just to make sure, but there were absolutely no records or video evidence of us having been there at all that day, despite the fact that my dad and I both know that we were definitely there. We went to the county building after that, and we got the same treatment. The woman who'd been looking at me strangely upon seeing me, again, after 2 years, greeted both me and my dad like she hadn't seen us at all that day. My records were totally fine. So there was a solid 2 hours where I know that as far as the county was concerned, I either simply didn't exist for 4 years or vanished after 2. But when we went back to talk to them, as far as everyone else recalls, nothing strange at all happened that day. My dad was with me the whole time and experienced all of that too, and we lost 2 hours somewhere. Time definitely passed while we were trying to get everything sorted out, and it was 2 hours later than we'd started out. By that time, we got everything settled. Hey guys, thank you all for watching my video, and thank you to Blotto Studios and Alex Majors for all your help and support. Alex Majors, thank you for the suggestion on glitches in the Matrix. Honestly, man, you've been really awesome with your ideas and suggestions. And honestly, everybody's been really awesome with their ideas and suggestions. You guys all have been really awesome, and if I had to be thankful for one thing this year, it's you guys. You guys keep the ball rolling. You guys always give me great ideas and great videos to work with, so seriously, thank you guys. And to Blotto Studios, thank you for letting me use your track Space and Time, as with other tracks that you've let me use over the years. Well, over the months, excuse me. But if you guys haven't checked out the Blotto Studios yet, please do. He's really good with his music and whatnot, and he's been a really big help to this channel. So do yourself a favor and please check him out. He's awesome. And I'm sorry if this video is a bit late, guys, but I saw a little movie yesterday. I don't know if you know what it is, but it's called Star Wars. So that kind of backed me down a little bit on my schedule, but good movie. You guys should go check it out. And I want to run an idea by you guys. Since I've been having so much fun doing this narration work and whatnot, I want to know if you guys think it would be cool for me to narrate books for you guys. You know, I could get all my friends together and we could all narrate, you know, stories for you guys and whatnot, like books and, you know, like I said before. So it's just a little idea that I want to run by you guys, see what you guys think about it. It's not happening all right now. I still need to get a few people on board with it. So it's a story in the making, as I would say, or a project in the making. But seriously, thank you all for watching. You guys are awesome, and just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.